Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I am your host, Miracle Jones. We are so happy and grateful that you're joining us this evening. We are continuing our Black August series, and so we are so thankful that you're joining us. As a reminder, people like, what is Black August? I never heard of Black August before. It is okay. Black August is a month by which we are uplifting political prisoners, talking about prison incarceration. It started in the 1970s with the Jackson brothers and the Black Panthers trying to liberate themselves and others from incarceration. And from that, from their fasting, from the organizing that we've done at that time, they had four tenets of study, fast, train, and fight. And so we think it's very important that during this month of Black August, we're talking to people who've been impacted by incarceration, who are working right now to reduce the impacts of incarceration in people's lives and sharing resources. We know here in Pennsylvania, there's a lot going on. We know there's conversations about the budget. We know people are coming, back to school, and there's a lot going on globally, even, right now, what's going on in the world. And so we are thankful that you're taking a few moments out of your busy day to sit down and to talk with us. Tonight, we're focusing on training. We're focusing on the resources and the advocacy that's being done by people who've been impacted by the incarceration system and giving you some resources. Just today, there was an announcement by Lieutenant Governor who talked about a new website that is being used that people can go and directly file for their pardon. And so to get a little more understanding about what is even a pardon, what does it mean to be pardoned, what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about and reaching out to people, please welcome our very first guest. And y'all know me as a person who is in the legal community. I'm always happy when we have guests who are also from the community. And so we have a very, very special guest, the executive director of Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, Taylor Pacheco. Welcome to the program, Taylor.
Thank you so much, Miracle. Appreciate it. It's nice to talk to everybody tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about work that I do that is very important to me and I think is important to a lot of people here in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
But yeah.
The pleasure is all on mine. And just get started, for people who are not familiar, can you just talk a little bit about what is the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity and what is some of the work that you all do?
Absolutely. So Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, or PULSE for short, is a nonprofit legal aid organization. So all that we do is work to help people get free of their criminal records. And we do that through a variety of means, including direct service, advocacy work, organizing, research, providing support on data projects. But for direct service, and what I think most people need to know, is that work takes the form of expungements and pardons. And those are the two main ways to clear a criminal record in Pennsylvania.
Thank you so much for that. And because you just brought it up, get right into it. What is the difference between a pardon and an expungement? So within Pennsylvania, I know sometimes words, people say legalese is sometimes, a barrier to access. So if we can just break that down for our audience just a little bit.
Yeah, happily. I could talk about those differences all day. And I think it's important to know it becomes legalese, right? But it is important to know the differences and the two modes that you can use to clear your record. So expungement, I think, is the term that people more commonly hear when it comes to criminal record clearing. And you will often hear people say, that they are seeking an expungement. They got an expungement. It's important to know that in Pennsylvania, expungement is very limited. In general, you cannot clear a conviction record with an expungement. So if you went to court and you pled guilty, or you went to court and you took your case to trial and you were found guilty, you generally cannot clear that from your record ever in Pennsylvania, except for a few exceptions. Usually, though, what you are looking at to get a conviction off of your record is a pardon or the pardon process. So most of our clients come to us and they have conviction records and non-conviction records, right? So you get charged with something, you get stopped, you almost never walk away with just one charge, right? It's usually 3 or 4 or 5. Let's say it's a drug case. They hit you with 3 counts of possession and 2 counts of possession with intent to distribute and maybe possession of a firearm. And maybe you talk to your lawyer and you decide, I'm not going to take this to trial. I'm going to plead to one thing. The other charges get dropped in exchange for your plea. Now you have 1 conviction and maybe 5, 6, 7 drop charges. What would happen when you come to an organization like Pulse is that we would look at your record and say, okay, we can expunge off these charges that got dropped. Those are easy to clean up. We will file a petition in the Court of Common Pleas. We will hopefully have a hearing and we will go to that hearing and hopefully win. And those charges will be gone from your record because they do stick around. Even if you didn't get convicted of those charges, they are still on your record and can be found. They might be sealed, but they're still there. But for that conviction charge, we're going to tell you that one we can't take off through expungements. We're going to help you with a pardon. And that is a very different process than an expungement petition.
So much for breaking that down. So like I said earlier, there was an announcement about now you can apply for the pardon process online. And again, we know that there are thousands of people in Pennsylvania who have, whether it's charges or criminal records or criminal convictions on their records. And a lot of times, because they don't know the difference between expungement or a pardon, they may not try to get either. And like you said, there are a lot of people who have both on their records. But today we got that announcement. This pardon is now digital on online. A little bit about what that means, and especially for access, what that means for people.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to talk about that because it has been the work of many years. And, shout out to the Board of Pardons, shout out to Lieutenant Governor Davis, because a lot of hands have gone into making this possible. Before this, the pardon application process involved basically filling out a paper form and either mailing it to the Board of Pardons or emailing it to the Board of Pardons. But you're filling out, line by line, box by box, answering all the questions, your name, your address, your contact information, filling out answers about what happened in your cases that you're seeking a pardon on, writing an essay about why you deserve a pardon, what has changed in your life, attaching your court documents. It can be a lot. We help our clients with it, on a one-to-one basis. We offer pardon coaches, which takes us a long time because these are really involved applications. Digitizing the application is really important because it will make it easier, one, for us to get applications submitted, for everyone to get applications submitted, because you're no longer having to track all this paper down, right, and mail it off to Harrisburg and just kind of wait and hope. But you'll be able to send it off and know that it's sent in and track it and see what's going on. I think that will be really, really helpful for this process, which, again, it is an application process. It's not something you necessarily need an attorney for. We do help people with it, but it really is just filling out a form and asking the Board of Pardons to review your case and your life and decide whether or not you deserve a chance to be free of your record. But it can be tough still. It requires you getting your court documents from each court in which the court in each county in which you were arrested and you're now seeking a pardon for those cases. It requires you answering a lot of questions and sort of filling out these essay answers and going back into memories that for a lot of people are painful at this point. They've moved past their records and maybe were not at a place in their lives that they wanted to be at when they were acquiring these cases. So it can be a tough process. So every little bit that makes it easier is good and is important.
You said that this is a long time coming for people. Can you just talk about like what goes into advocacy? Because I think a lot of times people don't also always understand, like, particularly for people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, they sometimes think that like people don't care about them or their stories, or because they made mistakes in their past, no one is going to be advocating for them. So you can just talk a little bit about what went into creating this application process and being able just to show why streamlining this process is so much better for the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. And to answer directly part of that question of like, it can feel like people don't care. A lot of us do care a lot. I can only speak for me, of course, and I know my team very well. There's a lot of really passionate, really dedicated advocates out there who care a lot and work really hard to keep the ball moving. That said, everything is slow. Change is slow, progress is slow, justice, unfortunately, can be slow. And you keep going every day, bit by bit, ball by ball, win by win, but it takes time. So I know that this digital application has been a long time in the works. It took time. The pardon process itself takes time, unfortunately. One of the hardest things we have to say to our clients at the beginning of the pardon process is that it is about a 5 to 7 year process right now. And that is just processing with the Board of Pardons, right? Once your application is in, unfortunately, it will be most likely years before you are complete, and before you have reached the public hearing, before you get that shiny seal letter back from the governor. Um, it is slow. That does not mean that it's not worth it. That does not mean that people are not working in the background. It just means that some things require time and patience. And for us, advocacy takes a lot of forms, and it takes that direct service arm, right, where we're helping people one-to-one. We're going out in the community. We're setting up clinics. We are, following up with you, making sure we're getting everything in. It also means that we're having meetings with people who have the power to make decisions. It means that we are nudging people who we know can do things faster. It means that we're maintaining good relationships with the people who we know that maybe we don't share all the same viewpoints, but we can work together to move the ball together faster. Advocacy is tough and relentless, but always worth it.
Thank you so much for that. And we're going to put the link to the application, like in the comments, people are able to see that. And like you said, it is a multi-year process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their application waiting and going to get the vote. And so we want to make sure that people just like understand that there are organizations, out there, but there's also just people who are doing everything that they can. And so we also want you to get in contact with the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, to follow up with them if you have any questions, to engage. But you talked a little bit about, caring. And a lot of times people think about the legal community, the legal field as a community that's not super caring, that is very just like by the book, by the numbers. Can you just talk about, the work that you all do and how incarceration impacts not only your clients, but, the workers at the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity?
Yeah, absolutely. Lawyers do have a reputation for not caring. We do that to ourselves a little bit, so we deserve some of that reputation. I do think that almost everyone in this field, in this work that I have met, lawyer or not, cares really deeply, and that is why they're here. There's not, there's not real incentive to work in this field unless it is because you care. We are here because we want to be, and we stay because we know that it's worth it. For me, I come to this work from a family, a very big family. I'm from the area. My family's from Philly, and I've seen all of my brothers be arrested at different times. I have siblings who have convictions. My parents have been arrested. It is, most, right? Like most people I know and love who look like me, who are Black, who are brown, who are living in the city, country, really, who face these issues with the criminal legal system. So this is passion work for me. It is important work. I don't think that it will ever really be done, but that doesn't mean that we stop doing it.
Thank you so much for that. I would say also, as a daughter of someone who's incarcerated, I think just seeing another lawyer with a similar story is like so important, and I very much appreciate that you lead with your experiences and you don't shy away from your experiences. And I just have a couple more questions when I let you go. It's because it's a very busy Pennsylvania day. There are so many people who are on, either parole, have convictions within, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What is some of the messaging that you want to make sure that they understand when it comes to this pardon process? And just what does it mean now for them that this is now a digitized process?
Yes. I'll speak specifically to the parole point because it's a really important point to highlight. It can be tough to seek a pardon while you are still on parole, and here's why. Unfortunately, the Board of Pardons does like to see that you are living in the community, not incarcerated, not with any threat of incarceration over your head. So oftentimes we will see people apply while they're still on some form of supervision and they don't make it through, even though they are otherwise a good candidate, just because the board wants to see that time since your sentence ended. So we generally will advise our clients, look, I do think you have a good chance at a pardon, but it's not today, right? I want you to wait. I think it would be smartest to wait another 4 years, 5 years, 6 years before you submit this application. And the reason being, it is a slow process, right? It's 5 to 7 years. I don't want to tell someone, yes, let's send your application in. We wait 7 years and then you're rejected and we have to start that process all over again. Let's send your application in when you have the very best chance of success. And we do have a sense of when that is for most people based on tracking our own data and who succeeds in this process and knowing that there is value in waiting and making sure that you can show the board and present a very strong case for who you are and what you've done and why you have earned this pardon. That said, time is not wasted, right? Time is never wasted. If you are on pardon, if you're on parole, if you know you're not quite ready to apply for a pardon, use this time. Start working on your letters of support. Start talking to people who you know can write good letters for you. Start gathering up your documents like diplomas, awards, certificates, anything you've ever gotten that shows who you are as a person beyond that record. Start volunteering if you have the time, the energy, and the passion. Start working with something or someone that you care about, because that shows who you are. The more we can say to the board, this is who this person is as a full person, beyond just this piece of paper, this record that shows a snapshot of their life, of them, the better chance we have at securing that pardon.
Thank you so much for that. And again, I think that it just helps people understand and have realistic expectations of the pardon process. I think especially people think like, oh, if I apply on Tuesday, maybe like a month or two, like I will have a pardon. It was no, and
I
it's like
wish.
no. So yeah, it's a multi-year process. You have to have all these documents, right? And I do think that's still for some people that's still a barrier to getting their documents, which is why it's so important with organizations like yours doing these clinics. It allows people to kind of get access to their documents a little bit easier and a little bit faster. So again, make sure you reach out to Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. They're able to
Yes.
help people throughout the Commonwealth and get some information. As we wrap, can you just talk about how people can get in contact with you, how people can find more information about the work that you do and any type of upcoming programs that you have?
Yes, absolutely. So if you visit our website, it's pulsephilly.org, plsephilly.org. You'll find resources to completing the pardon app on your own if you want to go that way. If you want to come to our clinics and talk to us, you can go to events at the top of the page and click. You'll see where we next are and when. We are almost in every neighborhood pretty regularly, especially with the fall coming. We have more events coming up, so please come out and see us. Even if you are not sure if you might be pardon eligible, please come talk to us and we can give you some more advice or do our intake form so that we're able to look at your record and give you the best, most individualized advice we can. Give us a call. We're happy to talk Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5, if you have any questions, even if you don't want to do an intake or come to an event.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Taylor. We very much appreciate it, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks so much, Miracle. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
And so that has been Taylor Pacheco, who is the executive director of Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. And again, as we have this conversation around Black August, it's so important that we bring all these resources together, because we understand that there's not going to be one way to liberation, one way to freedom, but we also want to understand that people who have already served their time are still impacted by the cycles of incarceration. And that's, last week we talked about some people in Pennsylvania. There are thousands. We talked about that on the first night of our conversation about how there were over 70,000 people in Pennsylvania who are currently impacted by post sentencing, with parole, probation, and that type of at home confinement. And so it's really, really important that we raise those issues up, because those was not something that was really readily happening within the 1970s. But since then, incarceration, at home incarceration, has really exploded. And so it's very important for us to still remember that those people are still being impacted by the cycles of incarceration. And we have been talking, with some of our previous guests about, the upcoming caravan that's happening in September. And so our next guest is another organizer who has been doing some of the work to make that caravan reality, but also wanted to talk more about the experiences of a more vulnerable population while they are incarcerated. And so we want to welcome our next guest and organizer with CADBI and Let's Get Free, Chaco Iwase. Iwasase. Welcome, Chaco, to the program.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so very much for being here. I know it's a very busy time for you as you're getting ready for the caravan. But before we get there, can you just talk a little bit about what is Let's Get Free, what is CADBI, and some of the work that y'all do outside of the caravan?
So, CADBI stands for the Coalition to End Death by Incarceration. So, Pennsylvania has over 5,000 people serving life sentences, and that is I think that's the third most out of all the states across America. So CADBI has multiple chapters. There's CADBI like in Eastern Pennsylvania, and then also Western, and also chapters in between. And it's mostly people who are loved ones of people who are incarcerated, people who are formerly incarcerated, and generally just people who care about changing the criminal legal system. And Let's Get Free is a woman and trans prisoner defense committee that's volunteer run. We do a lot of advocacy focused on commutation, also inside out connections. There's a letter writing space. There's a van that goes to the facilities for visits, and also art and changing the culture around incarceration. I specifically started a project called Project Chrysalis with a collaborator named Jendi, and with my mentor Etta, which is specifically focused on hosting letter writing spaces and maintaining connections with those who are incarcerated and trans in Pennsylvania state prisons, and raising awareness on the atrocities that they have to endure inside.
Thank you so much. And you talked about this project that you've created. Can you just talk a little bit why we felt that was so important to create that project, and why and how incarceration has impacted you as an individual?
Um, sure. So I have not personally been incarcerated. My first exposure to incarceration that wasn't through the media was through an Inside Out class at CMU. If you're not familiar with an Inside Out class, it's basically a college level class that happens inside a facility, and students from the outside, so college students, will go into the facility and learn alongside incarcerated students. So I took a psychology class, and I also took a creative writing class. I think that just I think that has deeply impacted how I see the world now. Like I remember in the creative writing class, there is a student who was relating to like a text, and especially like a quote that was like, being incarcerated feels like being in a book that no one's reading. And then one of the really upsetting things about the Inside Out program is that you're not allowed to sustain friendships with anybody who is inside. So after that, I reached out to Etta from Let's Get Free, and then she connected me with Zakai Vanderford, who is an incarcerated trans man, artist, poet, activist who's in Minnesota. He's been incarcerated since the age of 19, and he turned 58 earlier this month. So he has a death by incarceration sentence, and I'm passionate about the intersection between transness and also incarceration, because I believe that many more trans people are going to become incarcerated in the future, in the very near future. And I also think that people have to talk about how uh, prisons reveal something really sinister about gender, and also how no policies in prisons can make it ethical for a trans person to be there, or there is nothing ethical about how they are treated. And then I could get deeper into that, but yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because that is the reality that a lot of people are fearing, is that with this new administration and the way that some of this legislation is intentionally vague, that there is possibly going to be an increase of people being targeted specifically only because of their transness. And so, could you just talk a little bit about that?
uh I don't know if there is. I am not a legal professional. I'm a student. But I think that I don't I don't know of anybody who's specifically being targeted currently for being trans, but I know people who have struggled to access. I have personally struggled to access gender affirming care recently. Um, and I also think that the executive order that declares that trans people don't exist is very dangerous, because it excludes trans people from public life. And I think that that is very dangerous. That is going to um, put people in danger. But there's no explicit criminalization of trans people. It's just simply stating that we don't exist. And also, I think that there needs to be a change. Like, I don't think your genitalia should change the way in which you treat another person, and there's a current fixation on that in our current culture, and I think that's very dangerous. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. And so you talked a little bit about, this upcoming fear that you have about the erasure of transness leading to criminality, but also that you are in community with people who are incarcerated who are also trans. So can you talk a little bit about some of the issues that incarceration creates for trans people, and how we are able to advocate and support people who are trans while
Yeah.
they are on the side?
So something that I've noticed is actually a lot of people who are trans and incarcerated have, before they're incarcerated, have experienced a lot of trauma from being trans, and for their gender expression. So I think that's one thing. But once they get into a facility, oftentimes there's no trans person who is in a facility that aligns with their gender identity. So most well, all the trans women I know are incarcerated in men's facilities, and all the trans men I know are incarcerated in women's facilities, and everybody in between. They're not. Nobody is in the facility that aligns with their gender identity. Also, their gender markers and names are not. You're not really able to change that, which leads to constantly having your identity invalidated and being misgendered and also dead named all the time. Um, and from what I've heard on the inside, ever since Trump took office, there's just been increased hate crimes and also transphobia. Um, in prison, there's this concept of Z coding, which is like a label that indicates a prisoner should be celled alone. So a lot of trans people automatically get a Z code, so that means that they are incarcerated by themselves. Um, which can be a good thing for some. There's not like a standard, this is what trans people want inside. There's like a diversity in opinion and what people want. But I've heard, and it's very common for trans people to be put in solitary confinement, I think at a larger rate than cis people. And they're punishing them for being trans because, they're saying it's a way to protect them from being sexually assaulted from other people who are incarcerated, but it's also a way to isolate them. Trans women have talked to me about how they have been purposely separated from each other, and put on different blocks so they can't form community. Um, there's also a lot of pretty disturbing accounts that I've heard of people being sexually assaulted and physically assaulted by staff and other incarcerated people. I think the main concern that I have is that Pennsylvania state prisons might eventually end gender affirming care in state facilities, which is going to, and that's going to eventually, without a doubt, end in a lot of death. I think so. The Trump administration pulled funding from Maine Department of Corrections for providing gender affirming care, and this is a state facility. So, and also Georgia is working on like passing legislation that will force trans people inside to detransition. So I think the transphobic rhetoric that made Trump the current president is going to, like, it's they're doing it. They're going to, I think they're trying to delete trans people from the current moment and also history. Yeah.
You said you're like in dialogue with this community that's on the inside. You're also working on this caravan. Can you just talk a little bit about how the caravan seeks to raise awareness for these issues and some of the demands that the caravan has?
Yeah. So there are several legislative goals for the caravan. So we're focused on increasing parole eligibility for those who have a DBI sentence, especially aging individuals who have like a terminal illness or deteriorating health conditions. But mainly, I think we're interested in connecting with and activating community members who could actually do something about death by incarceration and also about the criminal legal justice system, period. Um, but we want to tell people who their legislators are and what they feel about DBI, and also connect with people who have loved ones in prison, and sustain those relationships for our greater movement. So I also plan on, I think I always talk about trans people incarcerated because that's just, I'm probably going to be talking about on the caravan tour. But a lot of this has to be done, I think, like changing our culture and the way that we talk about and perceive people who are incarcerated. So there's going to be a lot of art, poetry, and films, and also discussions at the different stops. I could talk like the CADBI tour is going to be starting in Pittsburgh, traveling to Erie, going to State College, Scranton, Lancaster, Chester, and then ending in Philadelphia. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I think it's very cool that you're bringing all the CADBI chapters together. I know you talked about that at the very top of the hour, and you're incorporating art because, like, again, art is liberation. Art is something that brings us all together. And so, like, as you're putting this tour together, you're wanting people to learn about their elected officials and to humanize the people who are incarcerated. In your opinion, what are some of the things that you wish people would know about, just in your experience, that you wish people would know more about those who are on the inside?
They're not any different than us. I think they have like the same like dreams and feelings, and they're worried about in the same way that we are. I think everybody makes mistakes. Although that's not to minimize harm, but I don't think we should see them very differently than us. I think that's my main thing. Yeah.
And for people who want to get involved in the caravan or to learn more about the caravan, how can they get in contact with you?
I would email Let's Get Free. I could link a website actually. So we are currently sorry.
No, you're fine.
So this is the website that we currently have, and on this site you could look at all the events and the schedule that we currently have. If you're interested, you could actually probably contact directly the point person for each stop, or you can register for the uh, caravan. There's a registration link. Yeah,
And
and there's also
so,
the email. Sorry, there's also this email. Let me just link this in the chat. It's cadbicaravan@gmail.com.
and so for the caravan, people are actually going from location to location. People are not just popping up here and there. Can you just talk a little bit like about that? Are people driving along? Will they
Yeah.
sign up? Are they able to just get in their own vehicles? Can you just talk a little bit about like what this caravan really looks like?
So the caravan, from my perspective, looks like there is a van called Falcor that Etta got, and we're all packed in there. Well, I don't want to say packed. We're gonna be in there, and we're going to drive. I think there might be a other vehicle, but it's going to be this van, and we're just gonna drive. And probably take turns. And be like staying at, if you could offer housing at any of the stops, that would be amazing. And you could also um, donate to the caravan for like to support us financially. But yeah, we're just going to be traveling and doing these events along the way.
And then what is your hope as you go from like stop to stop? Obviously you want to build community, but like what is your hope as you go from each stop? What are you hoping that you get to learn? And what experiences do you hope to gain?
Yeah, I hope that I can have like meaningful conversations with people. I also recognize that going like traveling across Pennsylvania, I think that there's many different attitudes towards trans people, and I think that there's probably many people who have never met a trans person, and I think that does motivate a lot of this really hateful speech. So yeah, I think, as I said, like I want to bring like trans people, like the discussion of transness and incarceration along with me on the tour. But I would like to talk to people about gender, period, but not just about being transgender, but also I think that there's a lot of gender violence that is in prison, but also outside of prison, and a lot of that it affects why people get inside. So yeah.
Yeah, so I want to thank you so much, Chaco, for taking the time to sit with us, talk with us. I'm very excited. If you're in Pittsburgh, I will also be at the September 21st launch that's happening in downtown Pittsburgh. So please make sure you come out and join us. And I'm very thankful again for Chaco for sitting down and talking with us this evening, because again, it's a very important conversation. This caravan is one of the first of its kind. There have been, cross Commonwealth caravans before. This is one of the first caravans where it's grassroots organizers trying to go from location to location to build up conversations around stopping mass incarceration. So yes, I will be at the September 21st kickoff from 2 to 4. And I will not be at the other ones, but there's some really great dynamic speakers that are going to be popping up at these other caravan conversations, because there are so many of us who've been impacted by incarceration. I remind people a lot of times the CNN report that said that, over 50% of adults in the United States of America knows at least one person in their personal circle that's been impacted by incarceration. So every one of us now possibly may know someone who has been incarcerated or know someone who has been incarcerated. And so it's very, very important that we have these conversations, that we build, that we learn, and that we are able to just learn to engage and be honest about how incarceration is impacting our communities, and using art is so important. When we talked about the pardon application going online today, like our first guest said, that was years of advocacy and organizing. And so with the CADBI bus tour or caravan tour, it takes years of grassroots organizing, sharing stories, building community in order to get things changed. And so when we're talking about fighting for people who are incarcerated, our next guest is going to talk about a way that we're in Pittsburgh, we can show up for people incarcerated tomorrow at noon at 12 p.m. And so we want to welcome to the Wanted Power Hour for our Black August takeover, friend to the program, Tanisha Long from the Abolitionist Law Center. Welcome, Tanisha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's always great to have you here. I know it's been a very busy time for you. And to get right into it, because I believe you left one meeting to get here in time. Can you just talk a little bit about what's happening tomorrow at noon and why it's so important for people to get involved? And then we'll backtrack to some of the other questions.
Let's start with the most important thing. So in Allegheny County, we are a county that is, in my opinion, leading the way when it comes to reforms and changes we want to see that are friendly towards incarcerated people. And one of the things that we've done that, no other county that I know of has done is we give incarcerated people $125 every month for commissary so that they can keep in touch with their loved ones, so that they can talk to their families, so that they can do video visits, so that they can buy things off commissary, hygiene projects, toiletries, things that supplement their diets, nutrition, even things like aspirin. A lot of people don't know that a lot of people who go into the jail don't have anybody there with them. They don't have anyone to support them. They don't have anyone to send them commissary. A lot of people are unhoused. A lot of people are unemployed. So we have a wonderful county councilwoman, Bethany Howlam, who led this initiative to take the profits from commissary and put them back in the hands of the people, the incarcerated people, so that everybody, regardless of income, regardless of why they're there, regardless of how long they're there, have this $125 to look forward to every single month. And tomorrow at noon in the Gold Room of the county courthouse, there will be a vote on whether or not to continue this crucial funding. Not everybody on the Jail Oversight Board has been friendly towards this initiative. It's received pushback in the past. And the reason that we're having this meeting at this time is because during the last Jail Oversight Board meeting, 5 members failed to show up and made it so that we didn't have quorum. So we are now having an emergency meeting, which is unfortunate because we could have handled this in a more timely fashion, in a way that would have gotten money into the hands of formerly incarcerated people, of actually incarcerated people a lot quicker. It's also done in a time that's not friendly to the public. Most people at 12 noon are working. So we kind of have an inkling that, some shenanigans might be pulled at a time when they think the public isn't watching. So that's why we want people there, to make sure that we protect this $125 we give.
And so you want people to come down on their lunch break, come down, be there to give comment, bear witness at 12 p.m. And you talked a little bit about this fund is from profits from commissaries. I think a lot of people have this idea that this fund is funded by taxpayers and only taxpayers. It's all a conversation, but this is literally incarcerated people funding a fund for themselves almost.
Yeah, the fund one is completely solvent. It's not money we're going to run out of because it's self-filling. This money is their money. Instead of the county taking the profits, the money was meant to be put in the incarcerated individuals welfare fund. And that money can only be used for things that directly benefit incarcerated people that the county is not already supposed to legally provide. So it's not to be used for staffing. It's not to be used for repairing the jail. It's not to be used for programming. It's to be used for things that directly benefit incarcerated people. And studies have shown time and time again that the best way to help people is to give them money. You can't buy things without money. You can't do video visits without money. You can't call your families without money outside of that one free call. Give the people their money back. And people, anytime people hear that incarcerated people are getting anything, the selfish thought is, what about me? Why do they get? Think about what's being taken from them. A significant amount of money had to be taken. A significant amount of profits had to be gained for us to even have this type of fund that tops $1 million every month. For this to exist, we had to exploit. So giving it back is the least we could do.
Yeah, and I think also there is a whole conversation around like the mental health and well-being. People are incarcerated and being able to have connections on the outside, talking to family, talking to friends, helps people's mental health, which also helps people transition back into society. The majority of people who are in the Allegheny County Jail at some point are going to be returning back home into society. And so it's very important that people have those attachments and those connections. I remember when the fund first came into fruition, there were people who hadn't talked to loved ones in months. I remember a mom coming up and saying she hadn't talked to her son in like 7 months, because people forget those phone calls are very expensive. And when you have to go between paying a lawyer, having a phone call, or letting some people get food to eat, because again, people need food. Commissary is food. Sometimes if you have food allergies, you may not be able to eat the regular food the jail gives you. If you're on a religious diet or restrictive diet, you may not be able to eat the food the jail gives you. And you have to buy stuff on commissary. If you need to take a shower, if you are someone who has BO and you need additional resources, I mean, be real, like people forget about these things. Like that one roll of toilet paper may not last, so you have to buy more things. And I remember one of my friends was incarcerated, and he was a person who showered every 4 hours, like when he was on the outside, just because he had a skin infection, right? Born with it. And so always needed to clean so he would not have, a rash or break out. And so would always have to buy more soap. So it's very important that people just understand like those who are inside are human and deserve to be treated like humans. So to backtrack a little bit more, you said you're coming up tomorrow. Can you just talk a little bit about the Abolitionist Law Center, the work that you do, and how y'all show up for incarcerated people?
So, I was fortunate to land in a job with an organization that is extremely value aligned. Like it's in the title, Abolitionist Law Center. We are working to dismantle the carceral state brick by brick. And what that means, it doesn't mean that, we are going to arrive at an abolitionist future overnight. It means that there are people who are currently incarcerated who need our help fighting back against the systems that oppress them. And there are people who are currently incarcerated who are facing dire conditions, dire circumstances, and even people who are formerly incarcerated who are living with traumas and harms that are done by the jails, that they need our help in fighting. We do things like fight against solitary confinement, fight for people for their right for what's called compassionate release, like people who are dying, and we are fighting to give them the chance to die outside of the jail with dignity. We fight for incarcerated youth and making sure that they have visitation with their family. We currently have use of force lawsuits against the ACJ for the way people are treated and for the harms they've faced. We are a mix between we are a nonprofit social justice law firm that also is made of social justice organizers. So we litigate and then we fight back in the streets. And those two things working together are the ways that we build power. And then we also have a political arm straight ahead. So we're pushing all those levers. We're pushing politics and legislation. We're pushing litigation. We're flexing our political power and building allyship. And we are also doing our community organizing, which is the role I play. I bring the community together. I bring people to things like jail oversight board meetings to protest. I help people examine policy. But most importantly, and I think the most important thing that we do as the Abolitionist Law Center is we are a movement law firm. We understand that we are not the lead here. This isn't about us. We're not the stars of the show. The stars of the show are the people who are incarcerated. The stars of the show are the people who are directly impacted. The stars of the show are the people who have skin in the fight. And our role is not to lead that. Our role is to, support their work, let them guide our movement, and to train them to be the leaders. So, we're not doing this forever. I always joke that, my favorite job is no job. And I hope, I meet a future where I don't have to work because we've reached those abolitionist goals. But until then, my job is support and making sure that these people have everything they need.
Yes, a wise woman once said, "I do not dream of labor." Okay, but it is Black August, and we talk a lot about political prisoners, and it's weird that through the Abolitionist Law Center, really all of our Black political prisoners, the Abolitionist Law Center has been able to support, to show up, engage, have brought so many people home. And like during this time of Black August, what is that? What does Black August just mean to you? And how are some of the tools of our Black political organizers resonating with you this month?
I think when we talk about Black August, a lot of people forget that, being a political prisoner goes above and beyond, regular incarceration. The whole time you are incarcerated, you are going to be hyper targeted. You have people who have spent almost their whole entire time of incarceration in solitary confinement just because their presence as movement organizers, as political organizers, is seen as an automatic threat to the state, an automatic threat to the rest of the jail population. These are people who are recognized for the power of their voice. These are people who we look up to for leadership. And these are people who will be hyper targeted. So when we talk about what Black August means to me, it means that not only am I fighting for historically marginalized people, like those who face incarceration and who suffer from it, but those who have been punished for using their voice and their organizing skills and their bodies to speak out, and who will continue to be punished. And those are the people who are less likely to ever be granted clemency. And those are the people who are less likely to stop fighting. These are our leaders. These are our elders. These are, we are starting to get newer Black political prisoners. And also, we are facing some of the same things in the past where a lot of people are going into the jail as political prisoners and they're never coming out, whether it be death by incarceration or just straight up death. People who've spoken out are no longer alive from George Floyd protests and stuff like that. And those are the people that I fight for and the people I remember. And we talk about using the tools of Black August to fight, fast, study, train. I'm a studying girl. I read everything I can to prepare myself for what's coming. And I think a lot of us who, were doing work in 2020, who were doing work in 2016, who were doing work, far beyond that and before that, find themselves with tools to understand this moment and react to it in ways that I think some people aren't prepared for. And that also means it's our job to teach. I think that that's a part that is kind of missing from it. I think that, one of the things is I tell everybody I love an intern. Send me more interns. I love them because those are the people who are eager to learn. And those are the people who are going to be the next hopeful, not political prisoners, but the people getting them out, or the people who are, helping people understand what they're seeing. It took me 0 minutes to recognize what was happening with Donald Trump. I'm like, that man is a fascist and he's taking us all down with him. But for a lot of people, they genuinely experience a slow walk into fascism. And I'm like, we're here in 2016. We're here. Anyone who talks like that, acts like that, and behaves like that, if he gets his hands on this presidency, not once, but twice, it's all going down in flames. And we've been there for quite some time.
Yeah, I think it's really important because I forgot, I think it was Imani who said, I don't know what point people are going to realize, but we are the crabs, in the pot, and the water is almost boiling. And you need to realize right now was your last opportunity to jump out of the pot and bring your people on through. And so we want people to come down tomorrow at 12 p.m. Can you just talk a little bit, what kind of people need to get there to talk? Who do they need to see, or are they just coming to show up? Is this another one of the infamous 8-hour meetings? What do we think tomorrow is going to look like?
Okay, so one, we're not going to do that to you all, right? If it took 8 hours, then it takes 8 hours, but that's not what I'm anticipating. I think this will probably be a much, much shorter meeting. This is just a vote, right? They should just be voting on and debating the incarcerated individuals' welfare fund and whether or not to continue these payments. One of the reasons the payments were being so hotly debated as to whether or not we could continue them was because there was an FCC ruling that reduced the amount that the amount that jail phone calls and video visits could cost. That has been put on hold for 2 years. So there's absolutely no change to the fund for the next 2 years. So that excuse goes out the window. When we're talking points, 1, get there by like 11:45, 12, you're risking it, but they're going to let you speak. You have 3 minutes to speak. Important talking points. This is their money. That's an easy one. We want to be able to talk to our incarcerated loved ones. These are people who are not regularly getting recreational time. These are people who are, in the fights of, I have a court case that's coming up. I need to talk to somebody and feel safe. We've all seen the jail food. It's nasty. Hopefully they work out a contract with a better vendor. This is food that supplements it. We had an issue way back with the prior warden where women were not getting enough pads and tampons and stuff like that. Those are things you can get off commissary, aspirin. These are things that make it essential. And when we talk about violence reduction, this commissary fund actually helps with that because people aren't fighting over resources that don't exist. We're providing them, they exist. We're not having to do that. And it's not a have or have not scenario. So those are some things you could talk about. You can talk about, what that means for the families who usually are the ones providing money. If I showed y'all what I spend on my favorite incarcerated homie, or used to spend, you would be a little appalled and embarrassed for me. But that's just what it is. We're trying to make things easier on everybody. And we so often lean towards that punitive, they deserve to be there mindset that we forget that there are common sense things we can do to make everybody safer. And if my neighbor's being treated well or as well as they can be in the ACJ, I know they're going to come out with less of a chip on their shoulder and less harm and less hurt and possibly become a better neighbor. And one last thing I would like to say is, the work that you are doing and the work that people who show up consistently have done have made it much safer in the jail than it was 2 or 3 years ago. And that's something we need to be proud of, but that's work that is continuing and ongoing, and that can't be done without people showing up.
Mm-hmm. And just as we wrap, because you said that we want to just end on a positive note, can you just talk a little bit about some of the wins you've seen over the past year to give people encourage and motivation to show up for tomorrow?
Well, if you think about it, Warden Harper's no longer there. So hopefully he's, not enjoying a happy retirement. Hopefully he's having a very unhappy retirement. He's a terrible person. We've reduced the number of deaths at the jail significantly. That's huge. We have induction for medically assisted withdrawal from opioid use disorder. So that's huge. We have more therapists and psychiatrists at the jail. We've increased the amount of rec time that people are getting. The youth are getting more contact visits with their family. Everybody loves this part, but we now have a therapy dog in the jail. There's a puppy program where, they can help train. And that's another little tie to the outside. We have more programming in there. And I don't think any of that would have been possible if people had not organized against the old warden and against the jail, if they had not supported the county exec in her quest to find a warden who was operating more from a care-based perspective. And see, if you didn't have people who continue to show up and hold them accountable, if we put our foot off the gas, we're going to end up in the same place we were. But I do think, we have some significant wins and we're building a somewhat better environment. And I don't think that would have been possible under the old warden at all. Actually, I know it wouldn't have been possible. None of these changes would have. And I don't think it would have been possible under the former county exec. And I don't think it's possible without people showing up. Groups like, One Hood shows up. We have people on the JOB, Manny and Bethany, who always show up. ALC shows up. We have PIN, we have Take Action Advocacy Group, APA, and we all just come together. And it's not just community groups, it's individuals, it's families of loved ones. It's incarcerated people themselves writing us letters from the inside and just asking for amplification. These are things that all matter. And sometimes you feel like you're just pushing a boulder up the hill and everything's going to fall down and everything's so fragile. But if you look back, we've done some big things and that needs celebrated.
Thank you so very much for that. Again, everyone, tomorrow, 12 p.m. Be be there or be square, I guess you would say, and you could follow the Abolitionist Law Center. You know what? It's fine. You can follow the Abolitionist Law Center for more information and just show up and keep fighting for your neighbors. Again, it's gonna be really, really important that you show up. And one of the things we don't always talk about is every time you get a win, you always have to go out and defend your wins, because people, you don't think about it, but people are always going to be there. So make sure you show up tomorrow, 12 p.m., Allegheny County Jail Oversight Board in the Gold Room. I believe that's the fourth floor again. So again, just like show up, be there. If you don't want to give comment, just be there and support in solidarity. I thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to post this as we talk about Black August. I have the pleasure of emceeing the Zakaya House fundraiser on August 30th. And we put that link in the chat to either donate or purchase tickets. It is a recovery house. It serves to do work to end addiction, to end homelessness, and to reduce barriers to reentry. It started by a woman who was formerly incarcerated herself, and she is really trying to be out here in the community, giving people opportunity to have a second chance. So please join us on August 30th. And we just have one more amazing Black August takeover, and possibly a special takeover happening. So make sure you are tuned into Womanhood Power. Make sure you're following us across social media, and make sure you donate so we can keep Womanhood Power in the fight for liberation. I have been your host this evening, Miracle Jones. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m.